Hey everyone, it's Chrono from the Headphone Show. Today with me I have a gaming headset, the Audeze Mobius. Let's check it out. Alright, so the Mobius is a premium gaming headset from Audeze. It's designed to work across all gaming platforms, and it also supports Bluetooth wireless audio, but it's optimized for wired usage on the PC. Now, of course, the Mobius is no ordinary gaming headset, as it neatly implements DSP features alongside Audeze's planar magnetic technology. But before we get to what the Mobius is all about though, let's first talk about some of the simpler stuff, like its packaging and accessories. The Mobius is accompanied by a very nice suite of accessories. For starters, there are 3 different cables included. The first 2 are USB cables meant for PC or Mac use and for charging the headset. Only difference between them is that one of them is USB-A to USB-C and the other one uses USB-C connectors on both ends. Then the third cable is a 3.5mm to 3.5mm audio cable for mobile and console use. Additionally, the Mobius includes an Audeze travel bag and some really nice instructions and quick start guides. I know some people might find it silly, but I really appreciate the manuals included with the Mobius, as they have very clear, detailed instructions and illustrations for the Mobius' extensive list of functionalities. Last but not least, there is the Mobius Microphone, which is attachable via a 3.5mm port on the front side of the headset, and it sounds something like this.
What you're listening to now is a raw recording of the Mobius microphone going straight into Premiere Pro. Of course, I haven't added any DSP or EQ, this is just the mic how it sounds. And as you can hear, it's just a little bit on the nasally side, but my voice has a pretty decent low end and it still has some airiness in the top end, so it's definitely one of the more natural sounding microphones I've heard in a headset.
Now let's talk about the Mobius build and comfort. Whilst Audeze is definitely not shy from using premium components in their larger LCD series builds like wood, magnesium, and leather, the Mobius is actually rocking a much simpler plastic design, but one that feels really good as it's solid, and for a headphone with a planar magnetic array and a battery inside, it's remarkably lightweight at 350 grams. One thing I'd like to mention is that aside from the buttons on the left ear cup, the Mobius has a fairly understated look, which makes it suitable for wearing outside without having to worry about it having a gamer look to it. For comfort, the Mobius is a pretty easy wear. As I just mentioned, they're fairly lightweight, so I doubt that they'll cause any fatigue for most listeners even after prolonged listening sessions. Additionally, the angled ear pads provide a fair amount of room for the ears to fit in, and I never felt as though my ears were coming in contact with the driver. The one comment I will make is that after a couple hours of wear, the headband could start to create a very mild hotspot, so I do think that it could benefit from using a split pad design. Otherwise, a pretty comfortable headset that will not get in the way of your listening or gaming sessions. Okay, so now let's talk about the Mobius features, and there is a lot to talk about here. Audeze claims that the Mobius is the world's most technologically advanced headphone, and, well, with all the tech that they've packed into this headset, I might believe it. For starters, the Audeze Mobius is wireless enabled via Bluetooth, and it supports both SBC and AAC. Additionally, it's equipped with LDAC technology, which allows the Mobius to receive significantly higher bitrate streams that come remarkably close to the same level of quality to when it's wired. The Mobius also supports 7.1 surround sound, but in case that's not enough, it also supports Waves NX 3D audio technology, which, as we'll talk more about briefly when discussing sound, uses DSP and head tracking to create an enhanced sense of space and directionality. Then, the Mobius also has a ton of controls on the left ear cup, for which I'm really glad they included a cheat sheet for. The volume wheels on the rear side control things like master volume, mic side tone, changing EQ presets, changing listening modes, so stereo, high-res, and 7.1, as well as media playback controls. Then on the front, there is a 3D audio button that lets you change between sources like USB, 3.5mm or Bluetooth, center audio, and cycle through the different 3D modes. These are 3D Auto, in which Waves NX automatically calibrates the center of the image, 3D Manual, in which the user calibrates what the front reference point is, and 3D On, which enables the stereo expanding with no head tracking. Also, of course, 3D Off for good old stereo. One thing to note here is that 3D audio is not available for usage when the Mobius is set to high res mode. So you can only enable it when the Mobius is on 7.1 or just stereo mode. Then on the face of the left ear cup, there is a power button that doubles up as a Bluetooth pairing button and a mic mute switch. Also, for all actions and commands used, the Mobius gives you voice prompts to let you know what changes you've made. I know that we've already covered a lot, but lastly, there is the Audeze HQ software, which lets you tailor the 3D calibration, and there you'll find more info on both the headset and EQ presets. Okay, so now that we've covered all that stuff, we can finally talk about how the Mobius sounds, and well, I think that it sounds pretty good. Sorry for the spoilers, but ironically, I actually don't think that it's particularly amazing as a gaming headset. However, for high quality music listening, I think it's actually one of the better headphones out there in the sub $500 range, as it provides a very enjoyable and warm listening experience. Talking first about its frequency response, the Mobius has a very even bass region with a great extension and articulation that is to be expected from a headphone with a planar magnetic array, which when compared to a lot of the dynamic driver headphones in this price range seems to draw more of the depth and rumble of the sub-bass frequencies whilst remaining clean and tight sounding. One thing that I did notice though in both the flat and default EQ profiles is that the Mobius seemed to have its bass shelf start off a little early, maybe around 130 to 140 Hz, so there was a little bit of a subtle added mid-bass warmth that some listeners may appreciate. Then as for the mid-range, it's linear throughout with a good body and structure in the lower mids, whilst having good presence up top in the 2 to 5K range. Overall, the flat EQ preset has a very good depiction of the mid-range with a just organic tonality to it. Comparing the flat and default EQ presets, it sounded to me as though the default preset had just a slightly cooled down 3 to 4K range, so it might be more suitable for those who are looking for a more laid-back listen or those who are more sensitive to the upper mid-range region. Lastly, for frequency response, there is the treble region, which is actually quite dark on the Mobius. I wouldn't go as far as to say that the highs here sounded veiled, but they're certainly on the warmer side. For my taste and preferences, I would have liked to have heard a bit more energy and bite in the around 8 to 10K, as well as a bit more upper treble extension. Having said that though, the treble range on the Mobius is pretty smooth and balanced, and it never really became fatiguing, which is probably good news for those who are treble allergic. As a whole, I'm really impressed with the tuning that Audeze got out of this design with this driver and the DSP features they implemented. Of the Audeze headphones I've tried, I think that this one is one of the most natural sounding ones. However, as great as the tonality is, it's actually the technical performance that the Mobius offers that impressed me the most. I don't think it's relevant to gaming, but the Mobius is a very resolving headphone. It almost feels somewhat strange hearing this level of clarity from a gaming headphone, but it's really got great detail retrieval capabilities, and in this regard, it's very competitive for its price bracket. To me, it's every bit as capable as the Sennheiser HC600 or Hi-Fi Man Sundara when it comes to texturing musical passages and surfacing all the tonal nuances. Moving along then onto soundstage imaging and layering, the Mobius soundscape is definitely an intimate one, which is not that surprising given the compact driver enclosure and distance to the user's ears. However, the presentation here is far from being a claustrophobic one, and is instead one that has very good depth, as all the different instrument lines and images are well spaced with good spatial definition. Unfortunately though, the imaging here is not that precise. Whilst left, right, and center are very well defined, front left and front right don't feel quite as present, so it can make the directionality and positioning of sound feel just a little bit convoluted. As I mentioned earlier, the Mobius features both 7.1 surround sound as well as 3D audio, both of which affect the headphone's soundstage, imaging, and layering. Now, right away I'll say that the 7.1 surround sound engine used here is not very good. It didn't really make the soundstage feel larger nor more precise in terms of left-right localization. The 3D audio though I thought was actually pretty good. It made the listening experience on the Mobius feel significantly larger, it had slightly better imaging, and in general I just found that it made the 7.1 mode obsolete. Usually, I'm not a big fan of spatial enhancing features on headsets, but I felt as though the 3D audio actually worked quite well on the Mobius, and whilst I definitely would not recommend it over stereo for competitive online games, I did appreciate the immersion it added for open world games, movies, and even some music. Definitely worth trying it out, as it can make for some interesting and enjoyable results. There is, however, one downside to using the 3D feature on the Mobius, and that is that it has a pretty noticeable impact on its frequency response, as it does spike the 5 to 6K in the lower treble, which it starts to introduce just a little bit of sibilance as well as some glare, and it also slightly bloats the upper bass to lower mid-range transition. Now, just for some quick final remarks about the Mobius and its sound before heading into a conclusion of this video, the Mobius cannot be used if it's not powered on, so even for just regular music listening off a mobile device or a computer, it has to be powered on, which means that if you're on the go, you're going to be relying on the 10-hour battery life, and you will have to deal with the very faint white noise the Mobius generates when it's powered on. Additionally, when running on Bluetooth, there is a slight delay on the Mobius. It's not super noticeable, but it could throw you off just a bit if you're playing things like first-person shooters. So if you're doing any sort of online competitive gaming, I'd recommend just sticking to wired mode. Okay, so now to wrap up this review, I have to say that the Mobius is a very interesting headphone. I suppose I'll start off by saying that this is a great sounding headset. Its tonality is honestly one of the best I've heard from any headphone, gaming or audiophile out of the box, and it's also got some of the best technical performance I've personally heard in a headphone under $500. Its acoustic presentation undoubtedly goes beyond that of which I think most of us would associate with a gaming headphone. For gaming though, which is its intended application, the Mobius wouldn't be my first choice. It sounds very good and has some neat features, but they're not ones that I think are particularly important or relevant to gamers, as something like chat mix would have been more beneficial than, say, head tracking. I also think that the Mobius could have just used less features, as the almost overwhelming amount of controls for all the different commands I found made it difficult to make quick adjustments while gaming, and I had them turned off most of the time anyways. On the other hand though, I think that all these features do make the Mobius one of, if not the best multimedia headphone available. It's very comfortable, fairly portable, and they have great multi-device compatibility. With the recent release of the Penrose, it seems as though Audeze has optimized the Mobius by cutting down on some of the more admittedly superfluous features and just made it a bit more streamlined for gaming. What I'm personally interested in now then is to see if Audeze can make a more general consumer or audiophile oriented version of the Mobius without the microphone or the gamer aesthetic. As I think that with this sound quality, it could easily be one of the top contenders in the wireless over-ear headphone market. And whilst it's already pretty good, I think it would make for an even better closed-back alternative to the LCD-1. Anyways, that is all for me today. I hope you enjoyed this video or found it useful. If you did, do consider dropping a like. If you'd like to learn more about the Audeze Mobius or other headphones, I highly encourage you to check out the review section available on headphones.com. For more headphone audio content, stay tuned by subscribing to The Headphone Show, and until next time, this is Chrono signing off.